Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. You have reached the No Name Cinema Society. This is our sound off, our freeform segment. It's the 45th time that we've done this, episode 61.4 in total. Hi, everybody. My name is Jonathan Betzler. I'm one of your hosts here. I'm here in my home in Los Angeles. I got Bogey here hanging out as well. And yeah, it's our freeform segment, and it's more conversational. We don't review a specific movie. We've got segments related to movies and the movie industry, etc. But it's a little more casual, a little more conversational. And here to have those conversations with me are a couple of handsome young men. First, one of my partners from the 1959 in review, James Monahan, is here.
Hey, how's it going, folks? Here I am.
James, welcome back for what's going to be one of your final broadcasts. You're going to leave us, at least as a regular member, after tonight. So I'm sad about that. Also with us, ladies and gentlemen, he's only done 5 shows, but his first one is already one of our top 10 shows of all time already. Zach Domingo's here.
Yeah.
All right, guys, this is our schedule for this. What was our 61st series of episodes. This past Thursday was our classic movie discussion, the Bond film From Russia with Love. And tonight, of course, is our sound off. And there you see just some of the things we've got in store for you this evening. It's time for a fan favorite. I know Zach is a little concerned about this one. It should be a lot of fun. It's time to bring back the movie game. Here are just some of the rules. It's very easy once you get the hang of it. The basic idea is one of us names a movie. The next person has to name an actor or the director of that movie. And the next person has to name another movie that person was in. If you name a movie or an actor, be sure you can name another movie that actor was in or another actor in that movie, or else it won't count. If you can't answer the question, you're out, provided someone else can answer the question. If they can't answer it, you're back in. I hope that makes sense. But once we start playing, we'll get the hang of it. I limit these to 5 minutes in case it runs long. But for some reason, I'm gonna set a timer. It never has come to that. No one ever. No, but I have been beaten for what it's worth, guys. George beat me once. Back in December or January, I can't remember, or maybe it was even November. All right, you guys ready to give it a shot?
Ready to give it a shot.
I don't have another choice.
Well, I'm gonna try and help you out, Zach, because I'm gonna start because we're gonna start with the films that we reviewed in this set of episodes. So you were on the show for From Russia with Love. So I will start with From Russia with Love. Just name an actor or the director of From Russia with Love.
Sean Connery.
So see how easy that was? Look how easy that was.
That was an easy pitch, though.
James, a Sean Connery movie.
Okay, how about Indiana Jones and the Last Crusade?
I just watched that the other night. That's kind of fun that you would go there. Now, definitely opportunities to trip up Zach here, but I won't take them. You don't do directors enough, so I'll go Steven Spielberg here.
Okay, let's just do E.T.
Might be a little harder. Not a lot of actors in E.T. that went on to have other careers. Only one, really, maybe one and a half. James?
Was Cameron in Charlie's Angels? I totally
Cameron.
forget. No,
you can't even get her name right. No, her name's not Cameron. I know where your head's at, though.
Oh, my God. Who is the actor? I was thinking of Cameron Diaz. Who is... Yeah, because I don't know any other actors in that film. But I can say the director, right? I can say Spielberg.
No,
right?
well, we've already done Spielberg.
Oh,
you can't bring it back to him. So
Can I say the composer, John Williams?
You cannot. Actors or directors. Zach stumped somebody. It's crazy.
I'm totally blanking on the actress's name in that. She's there's no one else in that film I would know.
We reviewed the film in episode 53.1, and in episode 51.4, I did a countdown of the top 5 child performances of all time for Elliot.
Did the kid who played Elliot go on to bigger things?
I can name at least one other movie that he's in.
Am I out of the game entirely?
Only if I can name someone else in E.T. you are, which I can. You will be out of this.
Maybe give me a hint, JB.
Famous Family is the person you're thinking of.
Yes. What's her name?
I think what he's thinking of, ladies and gentlemen, is Drew Barrymore.
Yes, I got her mixed up with Cameron. Yes.
He did mix her up with Cameron Diaz, so he couldn't name Drew Barrymore. So Drew Barrymore goes to young Zach.
Okay, Donnie Darko.
Donnie Darko, so I could stump him right now, will I?
It won't be fun, though.
So yeah, Jake Gyllenhaal.
Jarhead.
Jarhead, Sam Mendes, the director.
This is an easy one, and I know that. This is why I was worried about this. I'm out. I can't now. Dude, too much pressure. Can't do it. Too much
All right,
pressure.
I can go 1917 to be a Sam Mendes film, but I'm sure, James, you can
that's
name
right.
others as well.
Let's say American Beauty.
American Beauty, Road to Perdition, and Skyfall. Nice job. And Zach, I'm really proud of you.
Thank you. I tried
Yeah,
so
man.
hard.
All right, guys, we're gonna do another round here because they tend to go quick. So we'll start with James this time, and we'll give him the film that he reviewed in this set of episodes, Clouds of Sils Maria.
Juliette Binoche.
Juliette Binoche. This might be really hard for Zach.
Yeah. I'm going to tap out there. I mean, because I could keep going, but I don't want to embarrass you guys. So.
All right. Obviously, there's a number of places I can go with this, but I'm going to go with our film that was in a part of our 1988 review, and a big part of that. It was one of Alex's favorite films. I think my 11th or 12th favorite. Devin liked a lot as well. The Unbearable Lightness of Being.
Oh, shit.
You can name the director, too.
I'm less embarrassed by not having seen the film than I am by not having read the book.
Lead actor is sort of famous, too.
American?
No, but you know who he is.
He's British.
I'm not. I feel like any further hints is going to be really obvious. In the interest of time, I'm going to call it.
Yeah, sorry.
I feel like the lead actor of Unbearable Lightness of Being is Daniel Day-Lewis.
Wow, one of the greats.
If I said he's a 3-time Oscar winner, then that would have given it away. If I said he was Irish, that would have given it away. So I didn't want to do too much. All right. So what I'm going to do, guys, is we'll do one more round, and I will let you guys pick to start. And we'll start with Zach here because he's the most nervous. So you could pick a movie or an actor, and we'll go from there.
Okay. I just rewatched this, so that's why it's coming up. But Galaxy Quest.
Galaxy Quest 2, James.
I'm going to say Alan Rickman.
Alan Rickman. I will go back to our 1988 in review because he was a supporting actor consideration, and a lot of people think he should have been nominated for Die Hard.
Well, Bruce Willis.
Bruce Willis to James.
How about The Sixth Sense?
We reviewed The Sixth Sense on episode 51.1, so I will go with Toni Collette.
Ooh, wow. I forgot she was in that.
She was Oscar nominated for that. Really nothing else on Toni Collette.
I'm bad with names, dude.
She was Oscar
James Toni
nominated
Collette.
for that.
That's her only Oscar nomination.
Has she been in any big films besides The Sixth Sense?
Nothing as big as The Sixth Sense, but very few people get to do something as big as The Sixth Sense.
I'm not the biggest Toni Collette fan.
Are you throwing the towel?
Yeah, I guess I am.
Well, she was in a movie last year that was, I think, a top 20 at the box office. And it was Oscar nominated for screenplay in 2019.
Oh, really? Was she?
Yeah. She's in Knives Out from last year. Of course, the year before that, she was an Oscar consideration for Hereditary.
Oh, shit.
Wow, never saw that.
Both movies I really enjoyed. That's
Not only that, I saw Knives Out with Zach. We saw it together.
I simultaneously love and hate this game. It's too much pressure.
I want to move on, but I'm so curious what's going on in James's brain as he's thinking like that.
Yeah, I was like, yeah, I know I should have gotten that right. I mean, I was like, that was obvious.
Time to move on, and we're going to squeeze in a quick segment here. We'll bring back the tweet beat real quick. In March, we did our Decade in Review show, and we had a question come in relating to our Decade in Review show. The question was, what did we think were the best performances of the decade? And so I've named a single performance in each of the 4 Oscar categories that I consider the best of their decade in their respective category. One of them actually did win an Oscar. The other 3 weren't even nominated. So starting with Best Supporting Actress of the decade, and this is a performance that I know that James has seen. It comes from, sorry, I haven't technically read this. It comes from a film that I named as the best of 2018. This is Elizabeth Debicki in Widows. It's an amazing performance in a movie that I thoroughly enjoyed. It also made James's top 10 list. James, I know you've seen this movie, Elizabeth Debicki in Widows.
Yeah, I loved her performance. It's an ensemble piece, and she's a standout of all of them for sure. Her vulnerability, she made us want to root for her.
She has a very discernible arc. I don't suppose you've seen Widows, Zach.
No.
My number one movie of 2018. It was James's number 6, as I recall, of
Wow.
that year. It was the composite number 1 of 2018 for all the top 10 lists of the people in the show. It also made my top 10 of the decade. I don't suppose you guys saw my top 10, our top 10 films of the decade. Me, George, and Alex. You guys watched that show?
Mm-mm.
Sorry.
Yeah, figured not. All right, best supporting actor of the decade, and this also is a film that James, I think, has saw because we did the Oscar preview and I mentioned his name. Best supporting actor of the decade. This is Will Poulter from Catherine Bigelow's Detroit from 2017. One of the best racist performances to have ever hit the screen. Really gets underneath the fear that leads to hate. And James, I know you saw that one as well.
He definitely commits to it in a really frightening way.
So yeah, I have him as best supporting actor of the decade. Have you seen Detroit?
No, I haven't, but you guys make it sound really interesting.
It's about the Detroit riots in 1967.
It's very tense.
It was number 10 on my top 10 list in 2017. All right, moving on to best actor of the decade. And this one I know you've all seen, and it's very recent. I got Joaquin Phoenix in Joker, and this is the one that did win an Oscar. I can admit, as much as I had issues with the film, that was probably one of the best performances of the decade. And as I said in this past year's Oscar preview, I've actually named Joaquin as Best Actor of the Year 4 different times this decade. Of course, last year for Joker, in 2018 for You Were Never Really Here, in 2013 for Her, and in 2010 for I'm Still Here. I think it's only fitting that he would be the best actor of the decade, and this is the best performance. Guys, Joker and Joaquin Phoenix.
Yeah, he made that movie. I mean, I did not love that movie, and there's a lot of things I wanted to love about that movie, but I loved him so much in that movie. He was so good.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's pretty. That's pretty much how I feel about it. And James, you and I saw it together, though we didn't discuss it.
Yeah, it's the real masterclass in acting. I'm always a fan of his work. He's just mesmerizing to watch, and I love just how he commits to everything and how he commits so physically to every role. And in this, his mental angst really manifested in his twisted body. And I like that thing I think he came up with was the dance the Joker would do. He tried in one scene and kind of improvised it and became kind of a running motif in the film. He's amazing.
Cool. Last but not least, and this is from a movie we reviewed on the show back in episode 46.2. This is Rachel Weisz in the Deep Blue Sea from 2012. And this one you guys probably have not seen. Upon rewatching it for the show, it touched me very, very deeply. And it did make my top 25 of the decade. Along with Maria Bello in Downloading Nancy from 2009, which Zach did see, I think this is one of the most heartfelt, moving, and deep interpretations of depression and need that I've ever seen. It's based on a play, an older play. It was made into a 1955 movie with Vivian Leigh, but Rachel Weisz knocks this out of the park, and I think it's the best leading actress performance of the decade. I don't suppose you guys have seen The Deep Blue Sea with Rachel Weisz, Tom Hiddleston, and Simon Russell Beale.
No.
Oh, wow.
I honestly assumed that it was either a Lost at Sea movie or a Killer Shark movie for some reason, but
It's neither.
Not.
Neither. It's a metaphor, the deep blue sea, as it were.
I understand that now.
He's with us. He's back with us. You guys get ready to move on?
All right.
Next segment. This is the big one of the night. This is some of our fans' favorite segments here. Recastings.
Ooh.
We do it once a year, and this is really exciting. Every year we look at a different year in review. So this past year was the 1959 review. James, Patrick, and I each named a film that we wanted to remake from 1959 for one reason or another. And so we use this show to cast modern actors in those roles in our remakes, our supposed remakes, or fake remakes, if you will. James will be joining me for one of these movies, the one that he wanted to remake. I will be handling Patrick's. So we'll start there with Patrick since he's absent. The movie that Patrick wanted to remake is called Tiger Bay. If you watch the last Sound Off, I named it my number 5 favorite film from 1959. Patrick and I both named Haley Mills as the best actress of 1959, or should have been nominated for best actress. Patrick didn't want to remake it because it was bad, but he thought a similar idea in a modern setting with more ethnically diverse characters would be really impactful, especially if it took place on American soil. The original film takes place in Britain. Tiger Bay refers to an area of Britain that's now Cardiff. The first character is the Haley Mills character, the character of Jilly, who's 12 years old, a bit of a tomboy. In real life, Haley Mills wondered if she was so good in Tiger Bay because she was so oblivious. She didn't really care and just did role-playing for fun. And the result is something realistic and free. She would admit to getting self-conscious in later performances, like all the films she did for Disney in the 60s, and she never fully achieved the potential that she showed in Tiger Bay. This is a common occurrence with young actors. A more recent example might be Victor Rasuk, transcendent in My College Roommate's short film 5 Feet High and Rising, but suddenly awkward and self-aware in the feature version Raising Victor Vargas. And so an unknown actor might be the best case scenario for this role, but without the resources to audition 1,000 preteen girls for this particular show, I'm going to go with the actress Chloe Coleman from Now. Chloe Coleman is best known to audiences for the movie that came out this year, went straight to Amazon. It's called My Spy. It's not a good film, but she shows spunk, intelligence, and even the vulnerability required to play the tomboy character in Tiger Bay. Furthermore, she displayed the ability to hold her own in a relationship with an adult actor, if you can call Dave Bautista an actor. That's why I chose Chloe Coleman. Has anybody seen My Spy yet?
No.
I haven't, no.
Okay. It's not good, but Chloe Coleman is impressive as far as young actors are concerned. All right. The next character is in Tiger Bay. The name of the character is Bronislaw Korczynski. He's a Polish character played by German actor Horst Buchholz. Classic fans may know Buchholz for scoring the highly coveted Toshiro Mifune role in The Magnificent Seven. Regardless, given that we're modernizing the film and bringing it to the U.S., Patrick suggested going with a Hispanic actor. And so that's what I was looking at here. So I'm going to go with Ismael Cruz Cordova, perhaps best known for his work as the main villain in last year's Miss Bala. You guys looking at this picture, I know what you're thinking. This guy is ridiculously hot.
Possible.
As bad of a movie as Miss Bala was, Cordova was a positive takeaway. He showed a great deal of range, greed, menace, as well as empathy, regret, and love. He did a nice job, and I like the idea of him and Chloe Coleman on the run from the law together, bonding with each other during the process. Ismael Cruz Cordova. Has anybody seen Miss Bala?
I haven't.
No, it's fine. Another bad movie, but this last character from the film is not as much of a challenge. Superintendent Graham, played by John Mills, who's an Oscar winner, and of course he's also Haley Mills' real-life father. And I thought it was important to keep this character a white Caucasian male, as his character represents the status quo in terms of law and order and social structure. He's been on the job for years, is good at it, has reached the position of authority, but over the course of the film finds himself questioning the blurry lines between moral and legal laws. And so I'm going with one of my favorite all-time actors. He's great in almost every role, but I think he's particularly great in this role. I got Jeff Daniels as Superintendent Graham here. He's been doing stuff lately that takes advantage of his intelligent wit and biting sarcasm, but he's so much more than that. And look at his performances in terms of endearment or The Lookout to see the depth of emotion he's able to convey. Now we've got an actor that you guys might know a little something about. Jeff Daniels as a sort of weary superintendent.
Is he a likable character?
Very officious at first, solving a crime. As he gets to learn more about them, he sympathizes with them more and more as the case goes along.
Good, good. Yeah, I'd like to see Jeff Daniels do that because these days he often gets cast as dicks.
That's what I was saying with the biting sarcasm line. Yeah, he is getting that, and he does that really well.
Yeah.
But he can do a lot more, and I think his attitude to finish on Broadway, I'm sure, proved that to many. Anything on Jeff Daniels, Zach?
Nope.
He's amazing in The Lookout in a supporting role, but also in a leading role in The Squid and the Whale, Noah Baumbach's film. Yeah. That's my big Jeff Daniels recommendation. I knew he was great before that, but that's the only performance I recall him getting any real Oscar buzz. And of course, his television work and things like The Newsroom. Yeah. All right, now we're going to get James involved with our next movie. This is the film that he wanted to remake, and it's a pretty famous one. He wanted to remake Rio Bravo, Howard Hawks. Now, the only caveat here that I have is, in a way, Howard Hawks already remade the film in 1966 and called it El Dorado. It's more comedic, but ridiculously similar in setup. John Wayne was back with Robert Mitchum in the Dean Martin role and a young James Caan in the Ricky Nelson role. We're going to do 5 roles here from Rio Bravo, and we'll start with James, and we'll start with John Wayne's character, Sheriff John Chance. Who do you got?
I was just trying to imagine if I wanted to assemble a bunch of people I'd love to hang out with and direct. So I picked Hugh Jackman for the sheriff. He's a super nice guy and a great collaborator from everything I've heard. He fits, that role maybe too well. he'd have fun in it.
I went with a fellow countryman for the same role.
Okay.
I feel like John Wayne was a little too old in this film, let alone in El Dorado. So I went a little younger, but not too much. And I actually may have gone a little older than you. I went with Russell Crowe. And I feel like he has the gravitas to pull this off, not to mention the masculine and heroically stoic qualities of the character. I feel like there's some intersect there between Russell Crowe and Hugh Jackman. Obviously the country, but also their personas. I mean, Russell Crowe does not have the nice guy element. He's got a little bit of more of an edge, I think it's fair to say.
He's not as good as comedy, which it sounds like in your take on the film, it probably wouldn't be needed. I would have Jackman maybe bring out some of the humor in some moments.
We reviewed Russell Crowe in the film The Nice Guys.
Which I hated. Oh my God.
I didn't like the film, but I actually liked Russell Crowe. Zach, I know you haven't seen the film, but do you have thoughts about either actor, Russell Crowe or Hugh Jackman?
I mean, I like both of them.
My favorite Hugh Jackman performance might be Les Mis, actually, but I know you feel like Russell Crowe is not as good as comedy. I know he's a nicer guy. Is Hugh Jackman a better actor than Russell Crowe?
Ooh, I mean, can Russell Crowe sing and dance like Hugh Jackman? I mean, he's a real triple threat.
Definitely not. Les Mis, back to Les Mis, prove that. Oh, there you have the Les Mis connection, too. I didn't even think of that.
For me, someone who can do all of those things is a better actor. But
I would argue that Russell Crowe's performances in The Insider and A Beautiful Mind are better than anything that Hugh Jackman done.
Anything dramatic.
So moving on to the next character of Dude, played by Dean Martin in the film. James.
I mean, again, I want to pick somebody I would love to work with. There's so many actors who are great at playing drunk who would take it to another level and do something interesting, not cliched with it. I think it might be a lot of fun to cast John C. Reilly. He's a great improviser too, and so I'd have a lot of fun working with an improv skilled actor.
Would you worry that he might take it too silly? He might play some scenes over the top?
I don't think so.
I was impressed that Dean Martin didn't do that.
That's a good point, and he was actually known for professionally playing a drunk every time he went on stage. One of the other people on my list here was with John C. Reilly in another Western, The Sisters Brothers. Joaquin Phoenix, one of my favorite actors, would also be good as a drunk.
That's actually who I have. I have Joaquin Phoenix. So,
good. Yeah, he was my backup. Yeah.
Interesting. All right. That worked out because, I have Joaquin Phoenix. I think he's proven he can do anything, and we've already talked about that. And so a recovering alcoholic with an inflated sense of duty seems like nothing to him. I think he'd really get underneath Dude's vulnerabilities, his fears, and self-loathing. It's not the nice guy committee, but I love the idea of him and Russell Crowe together.
Yeah. If you haven't seen The Sisters Brothers, by the way, I recommend it.
Joaquin Phoenix is not generally known to be a nice guy on set, for what it's worth. He's got a bit of a surly reputation, along with Russell Crowe. Alex would be mad at me, but I'm not taking on-set behavior into consideration when casting these roles. So next up is Colorado Ryan. It's a great name. Played in the film by Ricky Nelson. I have an out-of-the-box thought here for Colorado. What do you got?
If I remade this, I don't know. I would want to mix things up racially, though it makes sense for most of these characters, if not all of them, to be white given the context of the film.
Given the time period,
Yeah. But maybe you could justify an Asian American actor. He's not that famous, but I liked his performance. Christopher Payne was in Crazy Rich Asians. He has kind of that cocky, good-looking. I mean, Ricky Nelson was obviously a pop idol, but I think someone like Christopher Payne, if you look him up, has the right look for it.
Ricky Nelson, as you mentioned, was a recording star who initially got famous on a TV show with his family, Ozzie and Harriet. And so, a tip of the hat to that legacy, I went with an actor that had a similar path, and also got a start on a TV show with his family, in this case his brothers. I went with Nick Jonas, who James might remember from Jumanji. Obviously, his TV show led to a successful recording career and now a movie career to boot. Very similar to Ricky Nelson's path. He's not the greatest actor in the world, but because Ricky Nelson played it, it's not that demanding a role. And if both Jumanji films through something, he has a screen presence and he can hold his own in the action scenes. Nick Jonas.
Nice guy. He's a likable personality.
Nelson-esque. You have to give me that. He's very Ricky Nelson-esque.
Definitely very Ricky Nelson-esque. Though personally, I like more surprising the audience by having an actor sing. Jonas is he's likable. He might get the young girls into the theater.
Well, I'm always thinking about box office too. Do you know Christopher Payne or Nick Jonas, Zach?
I only know them by name.
Okay. All right, now we're going to the old man, Stumpy, as played by 3-time Oscar winner Walter Brennan in Rio Bravo. Where are you going with Stumpy, James?
What popped into my head was Richard Jenkins, but then I realized he actually played a similar role
In Bone Tomahawk. I had the same exact thought. Yeah.
Wow, man. We're on the same vibe. We should be friends.
And that's exactly also why I discounted him. I'm like, oh, he's already done this.
Again, people I want to work with. And I think like maybe Jeff Bridges would be like too obvious a choice here. But I think it might be fun to have Patrick Stewart play this role. And I think he'd have a lot of fun being in a Western, doing the American accent.
That is fun. I really like that choice. He had not occurred to me. I wonder if you'll like my choice. I'm going back to Australia. Russell Crowe, of course, the Australian actor. And I opted to go again with a countryman. I went with Jeffrey Rush. The Oscar winner has shown a great deal of range over the years between Shine and Quills and Pirates of the Caribbean and The King's Speech. He's convincingly played very different characters and usually in an entertaining way. And perhaps the role that I would point to in order to prove his ability to do this is his work in Shakespeare in Love. I think he can easily transform himself into the quirky old man who still has a lot of fight left in him, Jeffrey Rush.
Yeah, it's funny. I mean, such an amazing actor, and I haven't really seen him in much of anything recently. I want some Jeffrey Rush. So for that reason alone, yeah, cast him. I want to see him act.
All right, so that brings us to Zach. How do you feel about Jeffrey Rush or Patrick Stewart?
I don't even remember Jeffrey Rush in anything. I didn't know he was in Pirates of the Caribbean. What was his character?
He's the villain, the first Pirates of the Caribbean.
Oh, okay. I love Patrick Stewart. I just rewatched Green Room recently. I think he's awesome.
Oh, my God. I love that film.
All right, we got the girl left. Feathers is the name of the character, played by the super sexy Angie Dickinson. James, who do you have as Feathers in your remake of Rio Bravo?
One of my favorite actresses. In fact, this connects to Green Room because she's in Green Room, but Imogen Poots. I just love her. And she's getting a little bit old for the part, actually.
I went even older than that, I think, because I feel like one of my issues with Rio Bravo, albeit small, is that Angie Dickinson was way too young for John Wayne, even though no one in 1959 seemed to bat an eye. But I did like the fact that those characters had that sexual chemistry. So I made Chance a little younger, Sheriff Chance a little younger. So I thought I'd make Feathers a little older than Dickinson was to get that gap a little closer. And I think the key element to the role is to bring charm and sex appeal without losing the wry humor of the character. And so I went with the actress that I named as Best Supporting Actress of 2019. Rebecca Ferguson. I can see Ferguson inhabiting Feathers' past as well as her desire to turn over a new leaf. And perhaps more importantly, can I see Ferguson and Crow get together? Hell yeah. Rebecca Ferguson.
I mean, the thing about Rebecca is she's one of the most beautiful women working in Hollywood. I'd be distracted.
Were you not distracted by Angie Dickinson?
Not as much. Sorry.
Angie Dickinson's really hot. But Angie, I think she was only like 23 or 24. It was ridiculous, the age difference between Wayne and Dickinson in this movie. And I also think in order to have the past that that character is supposed to have, a little more years under the belt. So we went in a little bit different directions, Zach. Do you know Imogen Poots or Rebecca Ferguson?
I do not know.
Well, you know her in Green Room. She's the girl in Green Room.
She's the band member?
Yeah.
All right, you guys ready to move on to the film that I wanted to remake?
Sure.
Do you remember what it was, James?
I don't. Yeah,
the
wasn't
Legend of Tom Dooley. Patrick loved it a lot more than I did. I wanted to remake it because I discovered that the actual story of Tom Dooley was a lot more interesting than the film. The 1959 film is basically based on the monster hit song from the Kingston Trio, which sanitizes the real story a lot. The real legend of Tom Dooley is very salacious and perhaps more interesting now that some of the taboo subjects of the 50s can be explored more thoroughly. And I'll try and cover it very quickly. Basically, Tom Dula, which is his name, D-U-L-A, was a backwoodsy kind of guy in rural North Carolina who was taken in by a local cobbler who had a much younger wife, almost Tom's age. So with the cobbler's permission, the Tom and his wife, Ann Melton, started having an affair. Soon after, Ann's cousin, Pauline Foster, comes to live there as well, and she joins the duo in a sort of menage a trois situation. Little did they know that Pauline actually came to the town to seek treatment for syphilis. In the meantime, Tom had started a side affair with Pauline's sister Laura, who's a little younger and a little hotter. So before long, they all had syphilis. Tom blamed Laura and vowed revenge, and she was found dead in May of 1866. So that's the salacious story, The Legend of Tom Dooley. And the film, which I don't think is even a film you saw, James, as I recall.
I did not, but is that the legend? Like, he legendarily gave everyone syphilis.
There was a real court case And those are the real facts that came out of the court case. What's apocryphal and what's not, I mean, I don't know if we'll ever know for sure. But the movie is a totally different thing about a forbidden love.
So there's no syphilis in the movie.
There is no syphilis in the movie. There's no syphilis in 1959.
I'm not going to watch it then.
I was already, which is going to have all the syphilis that you want. We're going to have
sign me up.
Starting with Tom Dooley himself, the character of Tom Dooley, which was played in the film by Michael Landon, who folks know from Little House on the Prairie and Highway to Heaven. He was a super hot young guy in 1959. I actually named him as the hottest guy we saw in a movie in 1959 in our last Sound Off. But I went in a little different direction here, and we talked about him earlier in the best performances of the decade. I went with Will Poulter. We've seen this British actor do several different kinds of things in films as varied as Detroit, The Revenant, and The Maze Runner. And furthermore, for better or worse, he has that kind of backwoodsy kind of look. And of course, the chops to pull off just about anything. So Will Poulter, guys. James, do you remember him?
A lot different than Michael Landon.
It's going to be a whole different movie.
Right.
Zach, do you know Will Poulter?
I don't.
Moving on to Laura Foster, who's sort of the co-lead in the movie, but would be sort of like more of a secondary character in my version. In the movie, she's played by the super hot Joe Morrow. And all three female roles in my version are young, early 20s, which is very similar to one of the 1988 movies that I recast last year, Mystic Pizza. So I'm going to return to that same well with a couple of the same actresses I named for that remake. Laura, I think, needs to be the best looking of the three. That's the one that Tom really falls for. And I would it would take someone special to lure him away from that menage a trois he had going on. So I'm going with Anya Taylor-Joy. And of course, I cast Anya Taylor-Joy in the Julia Roberts role in Mystic Pizza last year. But she proved her worth in other films like Thoroughbreds, Barry, and Emma, which came out this year and was released in theaters for a brief time. Do you guys know Anya Taylor-Joy?
Yeah, I mean, The Witch. Wow, that was an amazing film, and I hope to see Emma. She has a fascinating face. She has kind of these weird eyes that are unique.
She's stunning to look at, I think, don't you think?
Yeah, she's mesmerizing. Yeah, and she's good for this kind of demented syphilis film you seem to be crafting.
It's going to be more than just a syphilis film.
I see her mixing well on screen with Will and Poulter.
Oh, yeah. No, I think that's going to be great. And also, I mean, I think I'm trying to make my vision for this is something that gets underneath the reason they're unfamiliar with sexuality and they're exploring it without really knowing things. So it's about the lack of education. It's about the isolation of being, separated from a good part of the country, during this time in the woods that they live in, how that set them back and how they were sort of underdeveloped. Even some of their emotions were underdeveloped, leading to Tom's rage after finding out he gets syphilis. All right.
Of course, when you mentioned sisters are involved in this plot, I immediately thought of the Fanning girls.
Stealing my thunder. That's who's coming up next.
Oh, sorry.
Yes, Ann Melton, the cobbler's young wife. I've got Elle Fanning playing this role, and another actress I cast in Mystic Pizza last year, and perhaps the greatest actress of her generation. And I know that's a bold statement. And we reviewed her in the film Live by Night in episode 38.1. Other great performances to prove my point include Super 8 and 20th Century Women. And if you have any doubt about Elle Fanning's ability, check out her turn as a non-binary character in 3 Generations, opposite Naomi Watts and Susan Sarandon. It's a terrible movie, but she is amazing. An actor for the future. She's still really young. I think she'd be lovely in this role. James, you brought her up.
Yeah. Like I say, Elle's amazing. You might have to make her look more gritty if she's gonna be on screen with Will Poulter. I don't know.
I think they all will, because I mean that's part of the the issue. You got to see her in 3 Generations. I think she can look any way. She has transformed herself from role to role. Zach, Elle Fanning?
Nope. I have no idea. I didn't know Dakota Fanning had a sister.
Not only does she have a sister, her sister is better.
Damn. Okay.
James, you agree with me, right?
Yeah, I do agree with you. I mean, I remember the first time I noticed her was in that film Super 8.
She was Oscar-worthy in Super 8. She was great.
Yeah, she's great.
Zach, I know you've seen her. You may not have known you've seen her, but you've seen her.
Yeah, I've seen some of these movies.
She's also in Trumbo. At the time, I named my best film of 2015. All right, Pauline Foster. Pauline is the cousin who comes to live with the Meltons and becomes the third leg of the Menage a Trois, and later they discovered she's the one who brought the disease with her. And so I'm going with another show favorite for this one. We reviewed her work in episode 39.2 in Killer Joe and episode 48.2 in Afternoon Delight. referring to Juno Temple. I recast her last year as well in the Sarah Tobias role, the Jodie Foster role in The Accused from 1988. And whether she likes it or not, she oozes sexuality, which I think is key to this character. And as evidenced by Killer Joe, you'll see she also fits in with this backwoodsy Carolina world. So guys, do you guys know Juno Temple?
I know the name.
She's a recognizable face. I can't recall any like major like role where she's like carried a film.
She's pretty huge in both Afternoon Delight and Killer Joe. She's supporting in both, but I mean, she's also like probably the most memorable performance in both those films. I always think of Imogene Poots as like the poor man's Juno Temple. So it's interesting.
Sacrilege.
I recommend checking out her work. She's really good.
Okay.
Next is James Melton, the cobbler who had grown weary of his young wife and allowed another man to enter his bed, and another woman as well. On the bright side, he did not die of syphilis. And my brain immediately went to Richard Jenkins here again, but I'm like, no, he's done this. So instead I went with Jackie Earle Haley, Oscar nominated in 2006 for his work in Little Children, and was also a highly underrated Rorschach in The Watchmen in 2009. Again, I think you can easily see him as this backwoods character, and I think he can really try and add elements to this character and get underneath why he was apathetic about the sexual arrangement. Was he depressed? Was he secretly gay? I need an actor willing to stretch himself in a small role, and I think Jackie Earle Haley might be the man. You had an audible reaction, James.
Well, I don't know. For me, it just feels like he's played that guy too many times before. And it may be too obvious a role for him. I mean, he's a great actor. He's wonderful. Very creepy in those films you mentioned, Little Children.
I don't intend for him to be creepy here necessarily.
Right. You mentioned kind of the backwoods type.
There's going to be a lack of education. Like, he's a tradesman. Yeah. Zach.
I'm not familiar by face, but, considering what you're saying about the character in the film, as well as, like, comparison with if he played Rorschach, I mean, that character is a pretty, like, I don't want to say he's simple, but he's like kind of simple and rigid in like what he believes in and how he thinks the world should work. So I could see that.
Yeah, I mean, I loved him in that film. Also, a lot of people don't remember that Jackie Earle Haley actually started out as a kid actor in films like The Bad News Bears and Breaking Away way back in the day, in the late 70s. All right, guys, that's recastings. Was that fun, guys?
Yeah, pretty fun. I mean, I wish I'd seen the films you were recasting, but
yeah.
Well, you were given the option to. I'm just saying.
now, of those films, which would you recommend? Tom Dooley one or the
to watch in general?
Bay? Yeah,
Tiger Bay is my number 5 film of the project. Right. I have it ranked even higher than Career. I have Career at 7. I know you loved Career. Tiger Bay, I would say, is my discovery of the project. I'd never seen or heard of Tiger Bay. It moved me in such a profound way. So that was my discovery of this 1959 project. And yours, I think, was Career.
Yeah, I've been recommending Career to people.
And I've been recommending Tiger Bay. So there you go. It's time for the top 5. And we got an interesting one tonight. JB's top 5 directors working today. James is going to join me on this one. It's interesting because these top 5s are normally movies, and this time the top 5 is going to be people. And this is also based on a question we received via Instagram after our Decade in Review show from this past March. And it's not something I had thought a lot about before this, so I thought it'd be interesting to examine. And when I mentioned it to James, he said he would like to join me in doing his own top 5 directors working today. And what I discovered is there isn't a single director in which I've liked every single film they've made. It's interesting. They almost have all made films that have either disappointed me or left me cold. So I tended to focus on storytellers. So not necessarily the flashiest folks. Directors that elevate the material through basic cinematic tools, shot selection, blocking for camera, use of mise-en-scène. I would also say, unfortunately, it would be disingenuous for me to include a female filmmaker on this list of top 5. I just couldn't honestly say that any female director are among the 5 best working, but that has more to do with the sad dearth of opportunities, and hopefully that won't be an issue 5 years down the line if we have to do this again. Catherine Bigelow would probably be the closest. She would make a top 10 directors if I went that far. But the fact that she only made a couple films in the past decade worked against her making the top 5 directors working today. So James, do you have any disclaimers for your list before we move on?
Well, even though you very diplomatically excused yourself from excluding a woman in your list, makes me more proud that I have one woman in my list.
I'm afraid I know who it is, and I'm going to be disappointed. Zach, you chose not to participate in this one.
No, I'm going to add on, though.
Okay. Why don't you just make a list? But all right, James, you're number 5 director working today.
I wanted to pick people who, if I saw that they had a film out, I wouldn't even need to read a review or watch the trailer. I'd automatically be like, I'm going to go see this film. Number 5 is my female director, just because I loved Lady Bird so much. I love Little Women so much. She predicted this. I want to see Greta Gerwig's next film. I think she's great at working with young females, and that's great. And she's drawn to female-oriented stories. We need more of those. And she's great with working with ensembles. I like her sense of humor and a cool screenwriter, too, as Little Women proved.
I will say the scene work in Little Women was outstanding. The way that she moved the actors and the camera together, like, it was very theatrical and beautiful and perfect. I had some issues with the screenplay, but she does show some flair for that. But I don't love the films themselves. Certainly, I think the work that Catherine Bigelow is doing is much more experienced and thorough in terms of female filmmakers. Again, I couldn't honestly put Gerwig in a top 10. Even though her films aren't bad, I wouldn't even consider her for this list. But I had a feeling you would. I had a feeling there's other filmmakers on your list that I actually downright hate. Do you have anything on Gerwig before we move on, Zach?
I mean, I love Lady Bird.
All right, it's time for my number 5. I wasn't as impressed with his debut film as everyone else seemed to be. Fruitvale Station was a little heavy-handed to me, but whatever Hollywood saw in that film was prescient, because his 2 films after that, Creed and Black Panther, have soared. I've got Ryan Coogler in at number 5. Many independent filmmakers crumble under the weight of a big-budget Hollywood production. Coogler went in the opposite direction, creating one franchise and breathing life into another. All the choices in those 2 movies are informed by the heart of the narrative, and they manage to lead to evocative and entertaining moments. The fight scene in Creed, that's all one shot, for example, it's more than just a gimmick. It connected us to Adonis and gave us a visceral sense of the fight without ever calling attention to itself. It was a great idea that was well executed, great blocking, great performances. Coogler also shows a great flair for use of music. In spite of making big budget films now, Coogler also manages to find depth in these films, never lose sight of character development without ever being overly preachy, at least not anymore. So I've got Ryan Coogler here at number 5. Zach, anything?
No, I've been meaning to watch Creed, and I love Black Panther. I normally don't really care at all for superhero films, but that one felt like the superhero film of our generation.
Well, maybe your generation.
Yeah, my generation.
Black Panther made both my and James's top 10 lists of 2018.
Yeah, he's a fascinating filmmaker, and he does a good job. And you bringing him up reminded me I need to see Fruitvale Station, which takes place right near where Zach is in the Bay Area.
Yep.
You're number 4.
Again, this is just like, if I see they've made a film, I don't need to see what it's about. I'll just go see it. These are 2 brothers, the Safdie brothers.
No!
And this is without seeing much of their work. I've only actually seen Good Time and Uncut Gems, but I was so blown away by both of them. They are gritty. They're great at creating tension. Uncut Gems is the most tense film I've seen all year. I look forward to whatever they do next. It's going to be unique and interesting.
I met them at Sundance, and I don't even think you would get along with them. They're jerks that might inform my feelings, but I hated Uncut Gems. I hated it so much. I hated their debut film, Daddy Long Legs, which is what was at Sundance when I was there. I don't enjoy them. I had a feeling you were going to list them. Devin really likes them. I'm the opposite. If I see their names, I really want to avoid it if I can.
What do you hate about that movie?
I mean, I thought it was all gimmick. The style was all forced, and none of it was real. Like, none of it felt honest or real. It was all heightened gimmickry, forced emotion, forced tension. I really was mostly bored. We had long arguments about Uncut Gems in the Oscar preview of 2019, if you want to look up that show. But yeah, I'm definitely not a fan. So it's time for my number 4. And my number 4 is from the director of my number 1 film of the decade, for those of you that saw that show. And I've got that poster coming up. The film is Fury. The man, his name is David Ayer. Ayer reminds me kind of a 21st century version of Michael Mann. Not that Michael Mann's not making films anymore, just less. And the reason is explorations of masculinity and male relationships, and the films have a lot of well-filmed action while never losing sight of the character development. I did mostly enjoy End of Watch, though I never got over the pocket camera gimmick. I think it would have been a good film without that because of how good the character development was. But Ayer put it all together in 2014 with Fury, the film I named as Best of the Decade, an exciting, important, and moving exploration of the effect on war on men's souls. Once again, I point to a 10-minute scene inside a German apartment that features the entire cast as an example of great direction. shooting 7 characters and balancing all of their emotional arcs while also maintaining a sense of spatial relations, getting great performances and high-octane emotions in the process. It's quite a feat. I even feel that Suicide Squad was a lot better than it had any right to be. Granted, he was involved with the screenplay, which I felt was the real problem there, and which was too preposterous for its own good. But again, as a director, he's balancing several characters, and all of their arcs are done in an engaging and satisfying way. I think David Ayer is an example of a talented guy who's only scratched the surface of his ability. The last 2 scripts he's done, Suicide Squad and Bright on Netflix, were weak. So imagine what he can do with some better material. I think David Ayer is a great director. And also Fury was also Alex's number 8 film of the decade. So he's with me on that film. Guys, David Ayer.
I love End of Watch. I don't think it holds up to a second viewing, but the initial viewing of watching that entire film it's pretty powerful.
Have you seen Fury?
I have not.
James, David Ayer.
Yeah, I want to see End of Watch, and I haven't seen Suicide Squad. I've seen Fury. Maybe since you love it so much, I need to watch it again. It disappointed me. It felt forced to create one of these ensemble World War II films. It didn't really work for me.
I think it's extremely well done and very special. Most people haven't seen it, but you're the first person I've met that has seen it and didn't like it. James, number 3 director working today.
So yeah, another guy who I would just go see whatever he does, and it is Alfonso Cuarón. And probably my favorite film of his would be Children of Men. Like that's one of those films I could just watch over and over again. So I love his technical wizardry. He's technically exciting for pushing the boundary of what's possible to do in film. His use of long takes and wide angles still feels fresh, I think. He's full of ideas, and he's drawn to an eclectic mix of subject matters.
Yeah, and I agree. Children of Men is probably his best film, and I've got Y Tu Mama Tambien after that. He's made 2 films in the decade and won Best Director Oscars for both of them. He was probably my number 6. I was thinking about him, and I eventually knocked him off. It's a good choice. He is a great director. Sometimes I feel like there's some self-indulgent with the films. He's great with actors. I completely agree about the long takes and the wide lenses. My favorite work of his is earlier. He's like one of those Tarantino guys that once he gets real big, the films get bigger and a little more indulgent. They lose that edge, that leanness and meanness to them. And I think both Children of Men and Y Tu Mama Tambien were a little more focused, even though not as technical marvels as Gravity and Roma. Zach, Alfonso Cuarón.
Y Tu Mama Tambien is still on my list, so I haven't seen it, but I love Roma.
There are scenes in Roma that are so well directed. The whole isn't the sum of its parts.
I get
James,
what you're saying. I think knowing you, I am not surprised from that answer.
I hope that's not an insult, like that I'm just not
It's
getting.
not an insult at all, no. I have a better sense of who you are and what your taste is, and I can see why you would not like them.
Because I think maybe what you're getting at is there's some stylization to some of those things that I tend to reject. But it's interesting because my next number 3 director is also it can be somewhat stylized, and I hesitated with this one because this director hasn't made a film since 2014, focusing instead on directing great TV like House of Cards and Mindhunter. I've got David Fincher in at number 3. He made 3 of the best films of the decade, and the one that I like the least is the one that most people like the most in The Social Network. Not that it's bad, I just like the other 2 better. I think it's well accepted by now that David Fincher is a great film director. But I would argue he's grown a lot since his early flashy titles, Seven and Fight Club. Ever since Benjamin Button, his material is more adult. His choices add to the narrative instead of distract from them. The performances of the films are stronger. Now, Gone Girl was a very well-reviewed movie, but I think Girl with Dragon Tattoo might be the best example of great direction. You have a complicated narrative and a lot of balls to keep in the air, and he manages to do that without losing focus on character and without sacrificing the visual style he had in mind for the film. I'm also impressed at how different the styles are for the 3 films he's done in this decade. The ability to adjust your aesthetic to serve the story is one of the hallmarks of great directing to my mind. So guys, I've got David Fincher.
Fight Club would definitely still be in my top 25 upon repeat viewings.
I still like Seven and Fight Club. They're both top 100 films for me. James, David Fincher.
Yeah, amazing director to watch, and his team of designers are so great. Like his films are just so rich in terms of the mise en scène. I also like his often used color palette, which has a lot of like warm tone.
Well, it depends on the film now, which is what I'm really impressed. Like that was true in his early days, but I feel like Gone Girl and Social Network and Dragon Tattoo are actually very different from each other.
They are. They're still always rich with color, and I think Fight Club will be always the one I associate with him. But his later and Zodiac was great too.
Zodiac, and we saw that together. We had a double date for Zodiac, as I recall.
Really, you couldn't pick a better date film than Zodiac.
We were both pretty entrenched in our relationships at the time, right? They were both serious girlfriends. You married yours.
Yeah, so it didn't break the relationship. We tend to watch more rom-coms and like Jane Austen adaptations.
Okay. All right. It's time for James's number 2. Second best director working today, James.
Well, again, and this is kind of a recency bias type of thing.
No, here it comes.
Sure, I'm going to say Bong Joon-ho.
No! I hate everything he's ever done.
Oh my God.
The first film I saw of his was The Host, and I was just blown away by that. It's
Yeah.
just unique and fresh, and I've seen Memories of
Yeah.
Murder. Snowpiercer was unique. I love the design of that film. Tell me he has another film. It's going to be something weird and dark. It's going to be visually interesting, and it's probably going to make you think as well. I like what he has going on multiple levels.
And be totally overly stylized and not grounded at all in anything real or honest. Bong Joon-ho, I think, is a classic example of everything that is wrong with cinema today, and why I'm an old curmudgeon now is because total style over substance. It's all gimmickry, and there's nothing honest or real about anything. It's all reverse engineered, getting a concept and working backwards to fulfill his metaphors or whatever he's trying to do. It's different. So that's one thing that they're dazzled by, and they're dazzled by the style. There's nothing underneath it. It's like a cupcake with cream filling. It's empty calories. So I'm sorry, Zach. I mean, I will have to, but I never want to have to watch a Bong Joon-ho film again. Like, I really hate them that much. Time for my number 2. I have a filmmaker here that's a little more grounded, and it's the only director to have made 2 films that made my top 25 films in the decade. As a matter of fact, both films made my top 10 of the decade. Neither of them is the film that he made that actually won the Oscar for Best Picture. Ladies and gentlemen, I've got Steve McQueen in his number 2. And he's another director that I think who has exhibited growth in this decade. In his first film from, I think it was 2008, it's called Hunger, his use of the long take was indulgent, unmotivated, and boring. Now, McQueen, though still enamored with holding on shots for long periods of time, but in Shame and Widows, he uses the technique sparingly and in just the right moments. And the results were breathtaking in both films. Thinking about scenes in Shame like Michael Fassbender and Carey Mulligan having a 7-minute discussion on the couch shot from behind, holding on Fassbender running silently in New York City, and in Widows, holding on a limousine as it drives around the neighborhood while a conversation happens inside the limo. Ballsy choices that he finally figured out how to make work. Add to all that the extraordinary performances he garners in his film. In Widows, Elizabeth Debicki and Cynthia Erivo. In Shame, Michael Fassbender and Carey Mulligan. And Lupita Nyong'o would win an Oscar for 12 Years a Slave. McQueen understands his characters deeply, chooses his frames accordingly, telling the story in an extremely heartfelt way, putting together all the qualities that make for great directors. How do you guys feel about Steve McQueen? I know you liked Widows a little bit, James.
Definitely liked Widows. I liked 12 Years a Slave. I've been afraid to watch Shame just because it sounds like a very disturbing film. But maybe I should get over that fear.
It was my number 2 film of the decade. You already heard Fury was 1, but you didn't like Fury, so maybe that says something. Zach, anything on Steve McQueen?
Sorry to say, I actually still haven't seen any of his films.
I think you'd like Shame.
Okay. What's that one? I don't even know what that one's about.
It's a man with sex addiction.
And I would like it.
Yeah, pretty much. All right. So, James, number 1 director working today. We have not had a lot of crossover yet, so it's kind of amazing. I thought maybe we'd have 1 or 2. We've had none, and we probably won't.
There's a chance we have one right here at number 1. I think we might have crossover here.
I don't think so. I don't think we do, but go ahead.
Oh, well, I'm picking Paul Thomas Anderson. I mean, I would see anything he makes. I've loved his films. They're disturbing, I think, in a good way. They can be very stressful to watch sometimes, but I think like in a good way. Like Boogie Nights is a very stressful film, especially the last half of it. The Master is a very film, but it's riveting and unique. Yeah, I'll see anything he makes.
And I will see anything he makes too. I actually have him coming in at 7. Like when I was making the list, I ranked him 7th behind Alfonso Cuarón. The main reason why is that caveat that was in the question, working today. And he is working, but so infrequently, with the exception of Phantom Thread, which is, of course, his last film. I did not like Inherent Vice. I like The Master, but not as much as I wanted to. He is a great director. He's fully in control of what he's doing. In terms of the directors working today and consistently working today, I felt like I had to bump him down the list a little bit. That was my own criteria, though. But he's clearly a great filmmaker. There's no question about it.
He definitely takes his time, and maybe he also has trouble getting his stuff funded.
Phantom Thread is it didn't make my top 25 of the decade, but I think it would make a top 30. Like, it was close, but it's a very special film to me. Zach, anything on PTA?
I love Punch Drunk Love. I think that might be one of his lesser loved films.
Everyone except me loves it. That's one of my lesser loved of his films, but also it's well made.
It's a beautiful film to look at. I mean, I think that film is so good that it gets Adam Sandler playing a very Adam Sandler-esque role, but completely reframing it in a different light, in a really dramatic and intense light. I don't know. I love that movie. PTA is awesome.
And again, it was so long ago, which is why I didn't really factor it into my thoughts. You know, when thinking about PTA and working today and in recent films, it's Inherent Vice, Phantom Thread, The Master. I just felt like thinking about other filmmakers that were a little more prolific in the decade.
Yeah, that's fair.
My number one is a director that didn't even make a film that made my top 10 of the decade, though one did make the top 25. But I would say that I've liked every film that I've seen from him, even if I only truly loved one of them. So this number one ranking might have more to do with the potential I see in this director rather than the results themselves so far. So, ladies and gentlemen, I hope I get the name right, Denis Villeneuve, the French-Canadian director. I've got Prisoners here, which I think is a highly underrated work of art and perhaps the best example of his skills. It's a character-driven mystery tale, which is rare enough to begin with, but add in the bleak, desaturated look and the transcendent, desperate performances from the entire cast that include Hugh Jackman, Jake Gyllenhaal, Maria Bello, Viola Davis, Paul Dano, Terrence Howard, and Melissa Leo. His other films of the decade are all films I think we admire. Sicario, Arrival, Blade Runner 2049. I really like all those films. They're really well done. There's a variety of reasons why they didn't make my top 10s of their respective years, but they probably all make a top 15 of their respective years. And so Villanueva displays all the qualities that I love in directors, finding the depth in stories and using the cinematic tools to convey that to an audience while procuring three-dimensional performances from his actors. That's why I think Denis Villeneuve is the most skilled director working today. His version of Dune is next up for him, and so we'll see if he can continue to live up to the hype that I've set up. Zach, do you know Denis Villeneuve?
I absolutely love Blade Runner 2049. You could fill an entire museum with frames from that film. Unfortunately, it's going to be the last super high budget art house sci-fi film ever made, because that performed so poorly, unfortunately. But
now he's making Dune, so maybe not.
Maybe not. Yeah, I mean, you got a good point, but I'm very curious. I mean, I guess that's for whatever episode you guys went over Blade Runner 2049. But you know, and that's a whole other unfortunate conversation. But I love that movie. I think he's great. That being said, I haven't seen a lot of his films, but I am looking forward to Dune, seeing what he does with that source material, which seems like this really elusive material for people to work with, where everyone kind of wants to do it, but no one's able to do it.
Blade Runner 2049 is probably my number 12 film of 2017. It made both Ryan and Devin's. It was both of their number 7s, I think. We admired a lot. Denis Villeneuve, James.
Yeah, I agree with Zach that his images, kind of like David Fincher, I could leaf through a book of the storyboards or screen captures from his films. Cool visual sense. I think his films are good. I don't think any of them are great. Heavily relies on really good soundscapes, sound effects, and music to create his mood.
That's part of the art of direction.
Which is part of it, but it's not the only thing. But and so yeah, he's great at creating an atmosphere. I think that would be one of the number one skills I would give to him. But I definitely look forward to whatever he does next. Yeah, I'll be there to see it.
So I talked about Prisoners a lot. It was the one film that he made that made my top 25 of the decade. I think it was like 13 or something like that. Has anybody seen Prisoners?
Nope.
Yeah, I've seen it. It felt like it was trying really hard to be like this dark commentary. It didn't really do it for me, but I know you like it, and I'd like to watch it again. Maybe I'll see something I didn't see the first time.
It's a big maybe. If it was trying really hard, it succeeded with me. I bought it. Guys, we've had a long night, but it's been really fun. I enjoyed that top 5. I enjoyed the recastings. I've had a fun night. What about you guys?
That was great. Yeah, thanks. Sorry I didn't have a lot I didn't participate in the conventional sense, but at least it was good hearing from you guys and being able to add on in that sense.
Zach, you participated more than I thought you would. And let me ask you a question. Out of all the films you've heard talked about tonight, what's the one film that you want to go out and watch?
Ooh, that's a great question. I think I want to see Detroit, But honestly, it kind of makes me like not just the films that we talked about, but it makes me want to go back and watch some of the filmography from some of these directors.
Cool. And James, this might be your last episode for like a year or so, or maybe more. Anything you want to say to the audience?
Well, it's been thought-provoking. We've had a lot of laughs, and I've enjoyed being motivated to, think a little more deeply about the films I see. So thanks for being a great host and organizing all of this content, JB.
Thanks for being a great contributor. Some of your highlights, I think your most successful episode is your first one, The Last Emperor, was really successful. And of course, the 1959 in review is one of the best things we've ever done. It's really, really special. So thanks for all your hard work on that. Guys, with that, this meeting of the No Name Cinema Society is adjourned.
Adjourned.